Stay tuned, relax. I'll be right back. All right, welcome back to the show, the Nigeria Landlord Show. And today, like I said, we're talking about optimizing renewable energy for real estate development. And I have a guest in the house, which I'm going to be introducing. Her name is Onyinye Nzelu Anene. Onyinye is a pioneering force in the energy sector, dedicated to driving sustainable change and empowerment across sub-Saharan Africa. With a diverse background spanning over 10 years in ICT consulting and energy management, she brings a wealth of experience and expertise to her role as the head of mini grids at NG Energy Access Nigeria. As the first female certified energy manager in Nigeria, Onyinye has shattered barriers and blazed a trail for women in the industry. Her accolades include being recognized as the Association of Energy Engineers, AEE Sub-Saharan Africa Region, Young Engineer Professionals of 2020, as well as being an alumna of Yali Power Africa, Young Women in African Power. At NG Energy Access Nigeria, Onyinye leads a dynamic team tasked with electrifying rural communities, driving demand and fostering profitability. In her 2 years of leading the team, she has successfully closed a $60 million project finance deal for electrifying 150,000 households in Nigeria through mini grids. Onyinye's educational journey is marked by excellence with degrees from the University of Ibadan, Nnamdi Azikiwe University, and complemented by executive training from the University of South Africa Graduate Business School. She is registered engineer in Nigeria, a member of the Nigerian Society of Engineers and Association of Energy Engineers USA. Beyond her professional endeavors, Onyinye mentors women at GWNET and is a teens teacher at the Covenant Nation. Onyinye, you're welcome on the show.
Thank you.
Oh, hold on, please. Good to have you.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
All right, welcome to the show. All right, so quite an impressive bio, if I must say. And our topic, I know it's right on point, with what you do in the industry. So I know a lot of people, a lot of our audience do not really know about renewable energy, and they were going to ask, what exactly is renewable energy, and how does it affect them individually as a homeowner, as a tenant, as someone who is investing in the real estate industry? What is renewable energy?
Okay, thank you very much. So renewable energy, in very simple terms, as the word is energy that is renewed. Okay. So energy that, in a manner of speaking, the source is infinite, like the sun.
Yeah.
Right. So the energy we get from the sun, the way God has created the universe right now, the sun is always rising and certain, depending on where you are. And the sun releases so much energy every day.
Yeah.
So in a manner of speaking, it's energy that is infinite, energy that at every point in time can be available if you know how to tap it. So for example, the ocean flows, we have no control over it. So if we're able to tap energy from that flow of water, right, that is majorly controlled by the movement of the sun and the moon, so we have renewable energy from that source. So that's why we have hydro energy. So from energy from the sun, we have solar energy. In some countries, we actually have heat under the floor, right?
Yeah.
From the core of the earth. So we have that form of energy, right, that allows you to tap out heat from under the core of the earth. In countries like, for example, Kenya, we have that. So that is renewable because we didn't put it there. Now, in contrast to what we will call non-renewable energy, in today's instance, like crude oil, the gas.
Yeah.
In many instances, they'll tell you this is the quantity of the reservoir. There's a finite amount.
Yeah.
So over a period of time, over a couple of years, 10, 15, 20 years, that source is going to run out. So we find that those places, we don't refer to them as renewables. But in the context, again, of, the conversation around climate change, we find that most renewable energy sources are not harmful to the environment.
Okay.
So but that's not what makes it renewable. What makes it renewable is that the source is infinite, or can be defined as infinite.
Yeah.
Right. But also a second characteristics to them is that for a lot of them, they have very minimal impact on the environment.
Okay.
So which makes both of them good. It's infinite and it's good for the environment.
All right. So safer for humans, for the earth overall.
Exactly.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that definition. Quite insightful. All right. So now looking at our present realities, that is the state of power generation in the country, we're experiencing a significant growing shortfall in electricity. Which has resulted in various disruptions across operations across different enterprises in the economy, and has brought, I must say, hardship to citizens who are you and I bearing the brunt of this power shortfall. What is your opinion on this? What's your take actually about this low power generation?
So we have a multifaceted problem with power systems in Nigeria. No matter the angle you choose to look at it from, there are problems there. We have, thankfully, the federal government has signed in the Electricity Act last year, which is expected to drive more privatization, expected to bring in more people in the industry, and to make power become more available. From the generation side, we have a shortfall. Even though we don't have enough generation, we're also not able to evacuate it. So imagine that maybe you need, just for example, maybe you need 20 megawatts and we only have 10 megawatts, and out of that 10, we are even only able to transport 5, across the country. So there are challenges everywhere. And I think we can spend the whole day talking about the challenges, but not to talk about the challenges, to focus on today's topic, which is trying to figure out how, real estate owners, developers can find a way to solve the power problems and make their own real estate projects a bit more profitable and more attractive for people to live in. So in that context, we are finding that renewable energy, and especially solar systems, are becoming more and more viable to bridge the gap because of the energy challenge that we have right now.
All right. Okay, thank you for that. And like you said, the future of the real estate industry lies in the sustainable and efficient use of renewable energy sources. Because I know that if we must develop the economy, the communities and society, we need to look for other alternatives and reduce our dependency on gas and fossil fuels. So now, as a developer, let's come directly to the industry. For the role of the real estate developers, what can you say they can do in advancing efficient renewable energy buildings for our communities?
Okay, thanks a lot. So when we speak about energy efficiency, it's usually defined in two ways. It's either to use the same amount of energy to do more work. So same input, higher output, right? In simple terms, if I needed to eat only 1 meal a day, or I used to eat 2 meals a day to walk 100 kilometers, how will I use that same 2 meals a day and walk 120 kilometers? So you see, input is the same. Output is higher, or that you achieve same output, right? Same example, 100 kilometers, you're able to walk 100 kilometers a day, but you now eat only once instead of eating twice. So that's what efficiency, essentially that's what efficiency is. So the question is, I'm relating to your question, how do we make sure that in real estate development we're able to be more efficient with energy utilization? We have to build. So I'll start from the utilization point of view, then I'll walk back to the power source itself. So in the design of real estate, in the building, right? We have to build houses that will consume less energy. So I give you an example, just by the positioning of windows. Right? It brings in a source of light. So it means that during the day, we can have our windows open and then we don't have to turn on our bulbs, as many bulbs as we have in the house, which will mean that we will use less energy, but for the same output we still have lightning. The rooms are still well lit, right? And so if you have that kind of building that is able to tap into the power of the lighting of the sun, right, it means that we have more efficiency. Things around how we insulate our houses. There's some houses you go to, especially those of us that grew up closer to our villages, right? We remember how cool it used to be. Very cool without the air conditioning, right? It had to do with insulation material. Our forefathers understood it. There's a way you build with the right insulation material that reduces your need for air conditioning. So you still maintain the same ambience and temperature internally because you built with the right insulation materials, and so you don't have to turn on your air conditioning. So output is the same, which is cooling, but input, you don't need electricity right now. So that means you're reducing your energy use. So that's from a utilization point of view. There's a lot of engineering that goes into that. There's a bit more detail, but these are things that real estate developers can look out for. Now, if you then speak around just being on the grid, the one thing that will be helpful today, NEC, the regulator of the electricity sector, as our tariffs are service tariffs. The tariffs in the sector today is that supposedly if you use more electricity, you pay higher. Right? So if you have above 20 hours, you're on band A, your tariff is higher. If you have between 16 and 20 hours, you're on band B, your tariff is it's lower than band A but higher than band C. So the sector has split that out. Now, if we speak from a grid perspective, it will be to have a partnership, or maybe not a partnership, but an understanding with the utility in your area, with the disco in your area, to understand where the areas that are called band A, band B, band C, and so you at least you have an idea of the amount of electricity supply that is supposed to come into that area, right? At least that exists. Or secondly, even if, of course, land, you can't move land. So if your land, for example, is in an area that now it's not in the band A's and the band B's, which means you probably be getting 12 hours a day or less. It's then to figure out what other kind of infrastructure can we put in place to make sure that we have this power, and the sun is available, right? So today, just generally speaking, then you start looking at solar systems, right? How can you then use solar systems to augment what is coming from the grid, to plan your system design? It may be two ways. It's either that if in many instances now we develop in estates, so it may be that as you're developing your estate, you create a space to put in like a solar farm. So you put in a solar farm, or you do it in such a way that each household will then have its own solar systems on the roof. And when you do that, because of the economies of scale, because you are buying in bulk, you can find things cheaper, and you're able to do that entire installation in the house, and that will increase the profitability of the house, because now you're offering power, right? So you're designing from the very beginning to make sure that power is available. So those are some of the ideas that we can use to make sure that real estate is profitable from a power perspective. Wow,
that's really, really insightful. Thank you so much. All right, I hope you're having value, and if you have a question, I'm opening the phone lines now. The number to call is 0700 903 903 903. Call us. Let's hear your thoughts or your questions on this topic that we are discussing today: optimizing renewable energy for real estate development. Number to call again is 0700 903 903 903. We're going on a short break. Please stay tuned. All right, welcome back. If you're just joining us, you're listening to the Nigeria Landlord here on VOP 90.3 FM, and we're talking about optimizing renewable energy for real estate development. I have a guest in the house, and so far she has really been insightful on this subject. All right, so Onye, you're talking about solar energy and also other forms of renewable energy for real estate development. I want to look at the challenges. Are there no challenges, for instance, if a developer wants to put a mini grid development in the estates, the installation? I know these projects are usually capital intensive with the installation and the financing. Do you have any advice for developers that may encounter these challenges?
Yes. Okay. So there are challenges everywhere. If there are no challenges, everybody will be doing it.
Yeah.
First of all, looking at it from a policy perspective, and to answer your question specifically around mini grids. Today, mini grids are for underserved and unserved communities. So the policy will not allow you, quote and unquote, to put something you call a mini grid in, for example, in like a Lagos.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
Because mini grids by definition are supposed to be for places that are 10-15 kilometers away from the last grid asset.
Right.
However, the policy allows for other types. It's just a nomenclature thing, right?
Okay.
The policy still allows that you can have a power generating system, right, in a location, in an urban location, right, that is solar or that is any form of generation. So it's also something similar to what happens in some estates now, where the estates buy a diesel generator and they service power. You're just changing diesel to solar or wind or whatever renewable energy source you want to have. Right, so it's not, but you can't call it a mini grid, right? By the regulation, yes, but you can do that. The regulation allows for that. There's a certain level of licensing that you have to get regulated by NEC. There's a certain capacity you can't go above. Well, you can, but it's now a different kind of license. So there's a regulatory arm that you need to meet in terms of, so it's not a challenge, but it's just a hurdle that you have to cross. It's part of the regulator just needs to make sure you're doing things right, and that is properly regulated by NEC. The second thing is that of course there's a financing challenge. Today I don't talk about the macroeconomic conditions currently happening in Nigeria. Even without that, the exchange rate going off the roof and inflation going off the roof and all of that, because that has then significantly made solar systems more expensive because we don't manufacture it in Nigeria. So it's based, you have to go and import it. So the price is based on, the current FX. So that has made it a bit more challenging. But the thing with solar systems, as opposed to other forms of energy, is that so you have a very high capex. Your initial spend is very high, right? But subsequently, because you are not, for example, buying diesel every day or refilling your feedstock, it's the sun, right? Subsequently, the operating cost is very low. And there's something we use that we call the levelized cost of electricity, because it will be difficult to compare apples for apples, like diesel systems and solar systems, because diesel systems, you can quickly go and buy a diesel generator. It's not very expensive, but you have to buy diesel every month. For a solar system, it's very expensive to buy, but you don't have to pay, on a month-by-month basis. If you install it properly, most solar systems even give you warranties of up to 10 years, right? So it means your system is good. So all you have to do is wash it, make sure there's no sun and there's no shading on it. All right. And then it continues to give you power. So you have to look at it from a perspective of like a life cycle costing, to say, even though it's expensive on day one, immediately after the installation is cheaper. And then with that mindset, there are a couple of financial institutions in Nigeria that give out loans. But from a real estate perspective, I think it will be best that when you're raising the funding for the building itself, that you put your energy system in there, right? So you raise the funds as one, right? And you deploy as one, because then it's now easier, because the funders, your funders are going to be looking at it from that perspective. It's not like you're raising the fund for the building and then you raise the fund for the power system, because then it may add some level of complication. So my advice would be that you have a holistic design from day one, right? For those that have not started building, right? You have a holistic design from day one, and you're able to raise the funding from day one, even get all your licensing from day one, and all of that. Another challenge will be, you know, the capacity to install, because I mean, it's still, I wouldn't say it's still nascent, but it's still growing in Nigeria. We don't have the highest solar system capacity, so we find that there's also a challenge of finding engineers that can really install those systems. But you know, the current is for the Council for the Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria. They're doing a lot, you know, trying to train engineers to make sure and certify engineers that can install. So also recommendation will be to make sure you find certified people, because once you don't install properly, then you have a problem, right? So to make sure that you find people that have the capacity, you know, certified by the right agencies to do those installations and also to do your operations and maintenance. So those are a couple of the challenges that that you might face. Of course, like I said, I don't want to talk about the macroeconomic issues. If you're going to import, you're going to have customs, you're going to make sure you have your SunCap certificates and all of that. All those are not unique to the sector, they are just unique to Nigeria. So let's leave that aside. But those are some of the challenges that you face.
Okay, thank you so much for highlighting all of that. So that brings me to the role of the government in providing sustainable energy systems. I mean, are there policies? Because this is, you know, really a huge project. It's something that it's quite taxing, and it requires a lot of funding, and we cannot do all of that without the role of the government in it. Are there any policies or any initiatives that you know about, or you can advise, that could be implemented to help, especially developers who are coming up, to be able to ease this burden of generating sustainable energy?
Okay, so the government, in terms of policy as written in paper, has really tried to advance the policy with the market. Remember that, you know, it's a growth, right? So you advance policy with the market. We have the 2023 Electricity Act. It was signed by the current government, and really sets the stage, at least on paper, for a more privatized sector, for a sector that holds all the players a bit more accountable, the discos, the generation companies, the transmission companies. There's a bit more accountability in those documents, and it also allows more private sector to come in. So for example, the regulation today actually then says that every disco, right, must have a renewable energy generation component.
Okay.
You know, today everybody's getting power from the grid, but if implemented correctly, my layman understanding, I'm an engineer, I read it from an engineering perspective. I'm not a lawyer, so just to put that caveat there, right? So if implemented properly, it will mean that every disco will have to find places to install solar systems. So even a developer now that already has land can even say to the disco, okay, come and take here, we'll install it here with you in partnership, and you can, because it's like a quota system, they must meet a quota, right, of renewable energy. So that's even an opportunity right now, you know, for people to go and start having conversations with discos, especially if you already have the land. So it may be in a manner of speaking, you sell to the disco and you still are able to supply to your real estate, your
development.
Yes, exactly. So able to meet both. So we have that regulation. Even the generating companies too must meet a renewable energy quota for them to generate and feed into the grid. Like I said, it was signed in the last year, so the implementation is taking a while. But if it takes a while, then there's also the regulation of feed-in tariffs, right? Which means that even you as a developer, right, you can feed into the grid.
Oh, really?
Right, your solar system, you can feed into the grid, and there's a tariff that if you pay into the grid, right, the disco or whatever utility you're using, you know, pays you back. Sometimes it's a net off system. So for example, if maybe at the end of the month you're properly metered and the systems that make these things work are installed, so maybe you use, for example, you use 10 kilowatts, right? But then you supply 5 kilowatts into the grid. Your bill at the end of the month will just be the bill for 5 kilowatts, because like they gave you 10 and you gave them 5, so they net it off, right? So that's why it's called net metering, right? So it allows you to feed into the grid, and then at the end of the day, whoever is owing each other will then pay. So even if maybe you gave them 15 and they gave you 10, they'll pay you for the 15, right?
Okay.
We're seeing that work in other countries. We have a draft net metering regulation in Nigeria. Hasn't gone through all the stages, but government is doing what they can in that level. The feed-in tariff also allows you, to feed into the grid with your energy system. What that does is that it then makes all of us participants in the electricity market, right?
Yeah.
Because right now we're just consumers, right? But that advancement allows us to be participants, right? And to sell. So if, for example, you need 10 kilowatts, but you install a 15 kilowatt system on your in your site, right? So it means you have a spare 5 kilowatts that you can just be selling and be making money off it, right?
Wow.
So these are some of the things that we're seeing in other advanced countries. Our regulation is gradually getting there, and so it's exciting times for all of us. Another thing is that the government, the new Electricity Act, has also given the state government a bit more control. Okay. So even in terms of opportunities, so even real estate developers, can go and speak to their state governments and begin to lobby some things to say, hey, how about we do it this way? How about we do this way? I mean, we've heard stories, for example, what's happening in Aba now. It's because of that regulation. So if that's happening in Aba, it can happen everywhere. The government has given more powers, maybe not the right, but has given more powers to state governments to control electricity distribution and generation. The transmission will still remain with the government, right? So what happened in Aba now? It's just that it's not a solar system, but it can be any system, right? So the powers has been given, and we're seeing more and more states, beginning to rise up to that challenge. So interesting opportunity for anybody that wants to get into it.
Quite exciting times. I must say that's really good, and so people can look forward to more power supply in the near future with all of this in policies and implementations.
Exactly.
All right, so now bringing it down to the layman, because I must say we must have confused a lot of people with all your technical terms. At the point I was like, okay, I hope my audience are still with me. All right, so now bring it out to a homeowner, someone, a tenant, a renter living in his home. How can this individual implement a renewable energy system that is cost efficient?
Okay, so for a homeowner like me, a tenant like me, so I think first of all I'll look at it from the energy efficiency perspective. So I'll speak about two things: energy efficiency and renewable energy. We get power from the grid right now. The basic things you can do to reduce your energy cost, right? Which includes making sure that you have energy efficient bulbs, for example. The bulbs that we grew up with were those incandescent bulbs. They were in many instances, they consume 5 times more energy. We had 100-watt bulbs then. Today we have 20. In fact, we have 5-watt bulbs now. So for example, if you're still using those bulbs, please change them, right? You're helping everybody by changing it, because you're making sure more power is available, because that extra 95 watts that your bulb is using to power another person could have used it, and maybe power would have been more stable, right? So we have to start looking towards appliances that are more energy efficient. Remember when I gave that example, in the instance of this bulb, right, what you need is lighting, right? But the incandescent bulb, those old bulbs we used to use, was costing you 100 kilowatts. Let's assume it's 1 naira per kilowatt. So it was costing you 1 naira, right? But now it can cost you 5 kobo if you start using an incandescent. If you start using an LED bulb, right, that consumes less energy. So we have those simple things, right, which is just a little change of your appliance will mean that you're a bit more energy efficient, and at the end of the month you will see that your energy bill reduces. For those that are metered, I don't want to talk about the issue of metering, but if you're metered, you would actually see the reduction. So the appliances that you can use if you already have an appliance, is fine, but when next you want to buy an appliance, look at the back. There's something called a nameplate where they write the energy consumption of that appliance. Look at it. If you go to a store, if you want to buy from 3 different appliance vendors, check you will find the one that you check, you see the output is still the same, but you see the input energy. For some it's put on it, they'll put a sticker, they say A class, B class, C class, which says, oh, it's a bit more energy efficient, right? So for those, when you want to make those new decisions, that would be the advice. Try and find the ones that are, because for example, you buy a fridge today, you probably use it for the next 10-15 years, right?
Yeah.
So if you buy a fridge that consumes a lot of energy to give you the same output, the same cooling, right, you're going to be paying that energy bill for the next 10-15 years, maybe a 20% higher energy bill, which you could have saved, right? So in terms of that, but in terms of using renewable energy today, the most modular and scalable renewable energy system that we can use in our households today are solar systems. With a lot of financing institutions, banks and all of that are providing funding to say they can give you funds to install, and then you pay out over a period of time. Even some vendors are selling renewable energy systems and are giving us installmental payment options, that you can install, and every month you pay a certain amount. There's a business model of lease to own, right? So you buy it today, it's on lease, and then after a period of time you own it yourself. So we find those are are now available, and the people that I know that use those kind of systems, they would always tell you that, number one, reliability, because you're in control. Of course, for the sun, you're not in control of the sun, so when it rains, you're not quite sure that you get the same amount of energy. But in the times that you have a clear weather, you're off the grid, you're using energy, and quote unquote, you're not paying for the energy, you just paid for the installation, right? So you're not paying for that energy use because it's from the sun. So those are some of the things that homeowners can implement. And I've also mentioned that financing is available. Some organizations by themselves are giving the financing, banks are also giving the financing. So it's something that you can implement, and you'll find that in the light of our epileptic power supply, it can help you bridge that gap.
It's really heartwarming to hear all of this, all of these options available. I mean, I know a lot of people may not be aware about these opportunities and options for them. So I hope, my dear listeners, you've gotten one or two tips that you can use in saving energy in your home and saving your money. Okay, so bringing me to my final question, because our time is fast spent. What is the future of renewable energy in real estate development?
The future is that we're going to have a blended energy supply in Nigeria. So we're going to see a movement away from what we as engineers call conventional energy. So a movement away from the power from the grid, because the deficit in Nigeria is so huge. It's going to take us a long time to fill it. But we have customers, we have the population that need power, not even just for home use, but even for businesses, for stimulating the economy and all of that, right? So we're going to have a blend of both, where we would have power from the grid, but we're also still going to have to supplement and augment with renewable energy systems. And with the current price of diesel, right, making diesel almost out of the market now, if you can raise the funds to install renewable energy systems, especially solar systems, as you develop the real estate, and because if you install properly, you can have up to 10-20 years of utilization without any major issue. Just do your normal maintenance that you have to do. You'll find that is cheaper in many instances. In fact, before what just happened now in the country, where we have forex growing up, in many instances it was actually still cheaper than the grid. But now because of the FX issues, it's more expensive. But you still can't compare it with diesel. It's still cheaper than diesel. Right. So we're going to have a blend where we'll find more and more. We'll find that real estate will be a bit more viable because they are able to supply cheaper source of energy, and we find today that renewable energy systems provides that option to be cheaper. That's the future for renewable energy in real estate.
Okay, thank you so much, Onyinye. It was so much impactful having you on the show. I really learned a lot, and I know that there's so much we haven't covered. And well, I'm looking forward to having you. I know what it took to bring you here. I hope I can get you back here. All right, so this is the Niger Landlord, and I hope you enjoyed today's topic. I hope you learned a lot. All right, so we're going off, and we'll be back same time next week with bringing you more value-packed topic. Please send your questions to our Instagram page, the Niger Landlord. Send a DM to our Instagram page, the Niger Landlord, on Instagram at the Niger Landlord on Instagram, or you can send me an email, the Niger Landlord at gmail.com. For your sponsorship and advert placement, please send an email to the Niger Landlord at gmail.com. All right, I'll be back same time next week. Do have a blessed weekend. My name is Amara Onsrike. Stay blessed.